Today it is cities versus the state at federal court.
Dallas is among those who are suing Texas over its new law banning sanctuary cities.
And we fully intend to continue working against the hate that lie at the heart of SB 4.
Four of the 5 largest cities in Texas have filed a lawsuit against the state to challenge the constitutionality of SB 4, and that's Dallas, Austin, Houston, and San Antonio. Fort Worth is the 5th largest city, and we're the only one that hasn't joined the lawsuit. So United Fort Worth is specifically calling on the city of Fort Worth to join that lawsuit.
And I hate to even use something that's gentle, such as a nickname, but its nickname is the Show Me Your Papers bill. It's very similar to legislation that was previously filed in 2010 in Arizona, which was known as SB 1070. In Arizona, SB 1070, what it did is it said any law enforcement officer, if you can't identify yourself, they can and should ask you for your papers. Assume that you're an undocumented person. If they chose to, they could arrest you.
The administration has posed immigrants as sort of freeloaders for the country who don't work, and unfortunately that's why Senate Bill 4 is here today and why we're trying to fight against it.
For whatever reason, even if there's no intent or no specific crime, they might be asked their immigration status because they fit a specific, image of what an undocumented person might look like or might be or might sound like.
It allows questioning about residency of children, compelling them to ask about residency status when someone is not only arrested but also when they're just detained. Police officers will be engaged in racial profiling.
If you happen to be in a crowd and an officer says, hey, you guys, let me talk to you guys. You've been detained. And now he or she can now ask you for your papers. And if you can't identify yourself for whatever reason, if you don't have an ID, if you're undocumented or if you're a U.S. citizen, that's enough for them to arrest you. People already have stopped calling the police within the undocumented community. That has just made our neighborhood less safe. Only a couple of weeks ago, we saw the taquero that got killed in Mansfield. What happened to that guy? He was trying to defend someone that was being robbed in front of his taco stand. He got shot and killed. And when the people that committed that crime were asked, why did you do this? They said, because Mexicans always have money and they don't call the police.
People are scared to report a crime because they might be undocumented or they might even be residents. However, they're still scared that if they have some sort of involvement with a crime, whether it just be a witness, they might just be scared to report it because they don't want their immigration status to be looked at.
One of my former students, when she was in high school, her dad's truck was stolen. The family did not call the police because her parents are not citizens.
People are afraid because of the fact that we're an easy target. I mean, through history, there's always been easy targets, whether it be the African Americans or the civil rights efforts, the Asian Exclusion Act. There's always been pieces of legislation. There's always been rhetoric that targets groups. We want to make sure we step up our efforts in the city of Fort Worth and make sure that all of these communities feel safe and have somebody that's there fighting for them, like Mr. Ontiveros was there to fight for that individual.
Even today, you have Latinos. Prior to SB 4, some of my own friends who I lost because they were on the opposite side of SB 4 and were calling me saying, I can't believe you're defending these illegals, Ramon. When they're talking about my parents. These people are not illegals. These people are immigrants. And that's what I don't understand, how people think that immigrants are the person that they should fear now or the person that they should blame. When immigrants are out there outworking everyone, out there building jobs, creating businesses faster than any other group out here. Greg Abbott said this is going to be an emergency item. When a governor declares in Texas any item to be emergency, that means we have to pass a bill regarding that emergency item, or he can continue to bring us back for what are known as special sessions. Well, the Texas Legislature spent no time at all getting what was known as SB 4 to committee, through committee, out of committee, on the House floor. And I have to explain this. In many cases, there's some sheriff's officers that said, look, the only reason why this guy is here is because he's here for traffic tickets. And I don't have place for him in my jail. So no, let this guy out on bond. He's got a job. He poses no flight risk. In the entire state of Texas, with hundreds of thousands of people that are arrested, that only happened 216 times. The governor said, I'm going to prove a point. And he started with the sheriff in Austin. He threatened to arrest her. He took away over $2 million of funds that were intended for crisis situations, domestic abuse situations. He took it away. He said, if you're not going to abide by 100% detainers, I'm going to take away that money that I've given you. So that was a really roundabout way for me to tell you that it all started here in Texas that is, because some sheriffs were not abiding by 100% of detainers because they were doing their due diligence and they didn't feel like this person was dangerous.
I think whenever I think about SB4, I always think about families. Education-wise, children shouldn't have to be in school worried about their parents getting detained or deported or even questioned in general. Kids might stop going to school simply because their parents are too scared to take them, or kids might not want to go because they realize the danger they would put their parents in. I think every child is entitled to safety and happiness, and I think SB4 would really jeopardize that. Children, family, friends shouldn't have to worry about their loved ones coming home simply for going to school, because SB4 does allow campus police to question immigration status now.
For instance, my sister, she's been waiting 18 years just to get her appointment to see if she can get a residency. 18 years. So it's not her fault that she's not a resident or a citizen. It's just the process of it is so difficult. So attacking our communities because of the process and its lack, I think it's very wrong. My means of transportation to school was always the bus, because my dad, he did not like driving. The only reason he would want to drive was groceries or to go to work. And even that, being fearful of working as an undocumented worker for that time that he was undocumented, it was difficult for him and it was difficult for our family, because we couldn't enjoy the pleasures of going to the movie theater, going out and getting some pizza, getting something to eat. One day I did miss the bus. So I had to wake up my dad, because I would go to school like at 8 and 7 and the bus, and he wouldn't go to work until like 9. So I missed the bus. I had to wake up my dad. And just to look in his eyes whenever I told him that, Dad, "Papá, me vas a tener que llevar a la escuela. You're going to have to take him to school. I can't miss. I've already missed a couple days." So I sat in the back seat. So I would see his eyes when he would look back, fearful that there would be a police officer. And mind you that my school was about 2 to 3 miles away, so it wasn't a far drive. So I could only imagine how he felt every single day going 15 miles to work.
Selling ice cream in the park. And he was trying to load his cart into the back of his pickup truck. And another male had pulled up behind his truck. It was a white man. And he was yelling at the gentleman and telling him things like, "You need to go back to your own country." And I stood off to the side and listened to this whole thing go on, and observed it, and waited until the man that was causing the confrontation, who was yelling, to leave before I did anything. And then I asked the Latino gentleman if he wanted me to call the police, and I felt compelled to apologize that he had been treated in the way that he had, and he said that it was okay because that kind of thing happens to him all the time. And I realized that I had stood by and watched it happen, and that the thing that allowed me to be able to do that is my white privilege, because, you know, I could stand by and do nothing because I don't face that kind of discrimination from anyone. And I was pretty ashamed of myself afterwards that I hadn't taken a more active stance in his defense. And so I realized whenever the opportunity came up to get involved with United Fort Worth that this was my sort of my do-over and my chance to do it right, and to fulfill my faith and my morals and my values and everything that tells me that what happened in the park that day was wrong, and that sort of thing probably happens all the time, and I let myself be immune to it, and I just won't do that anymore. And so I would just call on others that If you feel in your heart of hearts that that kind of behavior is wrong, you are beholden to take action. That could have been the day that someone like Mr. Ontiveros was murdered. You know, it just starts as an altercation like that and escalates.
My dad spent almost 11 months in an immigration jail. That's how bad the people that are in office today, so many of them, caught up in their own power, that they don't even worry about the fact that they're getting money from private prisons, and they don't even worry about the fact that they're costing every single taxpayer to go keep these people in jail. People that otherwise wouldn't be hurting our communities.
So of course, with this piece of legislation, there's a lawsuit that's being filed to find SB4 unconstitutional for different measures.
Major cities, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio have already joined litigation against SB4, and that's what we're trying to do with United Fort Worth. We're trying to get Fort Worth to join litigation because they are the last major city, and United Fort Worth's really trying to push council members, the mayor, and just any other representative here in Fort Worth that has power to do something to actually take a stance and do something.
Every single person, everyone, can take an action that can have an impact on challenging SB4. They need to be contacting government officials to let them know that they support filing litigation and that they oppose SB4.
And I think we do have that responsibility because, for instance, I can communicate with council members, I can communicate with potential voters, I can go register people. I have that English and Spanish availability that my mom doesn't have. We're responsible for translating the way our families feel and the way our communities feel when it comes to social impacts like these do.
How about the fact that we only have 29 women in the House of Representatives out of 150 when there's more women in this state than men? If that's not enough to get you engaged, and go downtown and force a meeting and be there August 1st and go protest down in Austin. But absolutely the one thing that we have to do that too many people talk and forget is vote and drag other people to vote with you. People say, well, we're the majority. You can do the census and the census will tell you now you're 34% Latino. But then you can go take an election cycle and you may be 4% or 3% of the people that voted. Those are the numbers that matter. So people say you're counted during the census. No, when you're really counted is when you vote. And it's just a sad time where we are right now is that people aren't talking about the human cost. Jose Ontiveros right now is real human cost.
Right now our population is about 850,000. We're a majority city. So it comes down to actually trying to communicate between these different communities so we can start aligning our ways of thought so we can actually reflect that in our city government.
Since Fort Worth is a very red city, it's a little harder to get things done compared to Dallas or Austin, who are primarily blue cities.
When the city of Dallas tried to get its council members to oppose SB4 and file the lawsuit, there was hundreds of people who showed up at the council chambers and protested and showed their anger and showed their emotion. And it was just beautiful the way it just transformed to actually having the city of Dallas join the lawsuit. And it's been beautiful, and it's seen that it's been going on through different cities. It's happening in Houston, in Austin it was huge. There was hundreds of people showing their opposition to SB4.
August 1st is the first date, the first time that Fort Worth City Council is back in session from their summer break. As soon as Fort Worth City Council reconvenes for this next session, we need to show up as a community and let them know that it's important to us that before we get any closer to that deadline of September 1st, that we want them to take action.
That's our day of action that we're calling it. We're trying to put faces to these numbers. I think if you're on city council, you don't necessarily see the people sometimes, you only see numbers. And what we're really trying to do is put faces to these numbers, put bodies to these numbers, just so they know that there are actual living, breathing people in Fort Worth who are against it.
After the rally and march, we will go into the city council meeting and have the opportunity to present our views at that time.
Our very first press conference that happened about 4 weeks ago, we had about 100 people come. And to organize that, it took us 1 week. So in 1 week, we were able to organize a press conference with 5 individuals who would be influential, and with hundreds of people with signs and rallying and motivated. And the feeling of it was just beautiful. For the first time, we started seeing individuals in the city of Fort Worth come together and to show our opposition to something so hateful. And that forced our city representatives to respond to some of these news outlets whenever it came to the question of the city of Fort Worth joining the lawsuit. So just with something that small, compared to what we envisioned to the 1st of August, having thousands of people rally, go into the chamber and testifying on why we believe SB4 is unconstitutional, or why it hurts our communities, or why we need to drive up and make sure we oppose this form of legislation. Because for instance, if it's just 5 or 6 people going to the council chambers and just testifying, that's not going to have the same response of thousands of people showing up in red, showing up with their signs, showing up with their families, unafraid and heard and loud as well. It's going to be very impactful to the decision that the city of Fort Worth decides to choose, because I think they're going to be forced to respond.
Fort Worth needs more leaders. There's plenty out there. They just don't know it yet. They haven't answered the call. Same as I answered the call. If I was selfish, I should just be back over there building swimming pools right now. Thankful to United Fort Worth that they're doing these things, because it's causing people to get out on the streets. And I'm glad that it's young people that have joined and asked old people, come on, because we need your help too. And we just need it to be more. And when there's more people and they can't walk around that chamber, or they can't walk around the State House, they can't walk through the Capitol, that's going to be the day when I say, okay, we're getting closer. Not that we've arrived, but we're getting closer.